the last time. Things moved here. So, all right, so we finished somewhere between 13 and 20. Last time, I think right around verse 20 is where we finished. But Jesus had just gotten done in this case, relating a parable to them, and the parable of the sower. And of course, without going back over it, completely, what just kind of paraphrasing. What about the parable of the sower? What are some things that we learned from that? Do what? Different types of ground, and of course, in the parable of the sower, the seed represents what? The gospel, right? The word, and the ground or the soil, as Tony mentioned, represents what? Yeah, humanity, men, the person receiving it, right? And there were what? 4 types, right? If I have this right, there was what? The first type talked about seed sown by the wayside, right? On the hard ground, and what happens to that seed? To at least in this illustration, the seed sown by the wayside on the hard ground, what happens to it? Yeah, Satan comes and immediately, right, and takes it away, and as Tim mentioned, so that it never takes root. And it was pointed out last time, which I think was a good point, and I never written down last time, but Satan understands, I think, the power of the gospel as he immediately comes, so that it does not give it chance to take root or to take hold or anything like that. So Romans 1:16 talks about the power of the gospel, and Satan fully realizes that. It talks about his urgency in coming to take in this case take the seed away, which is the word, right? So takes the seed away so that it never takes root, and that person is never never does respond to the gospel. Now the next kind of ground talks about the stony type of ground. So we have the wayside, which is packed down and hard, so the seed never really gets off the top level there. Then we have the stony ground. And what about the stony ground there in verses 13 through 20 is where we are here in Mark chapter 4 and everything. But talking about the stony ground, what is mentioned about it? They receive it originally. Immediately they receive it with gladness, but what happens after that? But yeah, it doesn't have any depth, so that they receive it with gladness. Everything is great, but then as soon as what happens? Yeah, persecution, some sort of tribulation, bad things, persecution, whatever it might be. Of course, we can imagine in first century times, back then persecution was much more severe than we have now, but still, regardless of the time, of the time frame back then or now, it's still applicable. So, but persecution arises, and because it never has depth, right? There's never much conviction, to understand kind of fully, the word and the whole plan of salvation, the whole, seeing the unfolding of the whole scheme of redemption that God had for us. They fall away when things get tough. And so that's what happens. That's what happens with stony ground. Now the third kind we mentioned were the thorns. Now talk about the word of the seed that was planted among the thorns. What happens there? Do what? So it grows, right? But then it grows in the person, or in this illustration, it grows. But then what happens? It chokes. But the thorns come up and choke it out. And we mentioned last time that this unfortunately might be able to describe us. Might be able to describe some of us. It might be able to describe me here tonight. Just because I come here, just because I sit in the pew and I listen, and I come to Bible class and I sing and I do whatever it is here, doesn't necessarily mean that I'm being fruitful. Right? Doesn't mean that I'm producing fruit or being pleasing to God. Not necessarily. It certainly doesn't hurt. But there's other cares that that come to the world. Yes.
So the one that's shown on the holy ground today received it, and I don't think they hear it. They actually received it.
So I guess if we're talking about,
I wasn't really sure because it doesn't really, it says they hear it, obviously they hear it because they're ground and
right.
and coming that way, but.
So see, verse 18 says the other ones are the ones, I mean, are ones who sown among the thorns. These are ones who have heard the word, but the worries of the world, deceiving the riches. So they've heard, but it seems to indicate that it doesn't take as deep a root as it should. It seems to be a progression to me. If you look at the wayside, the stone ground, the thorns, the good ground. The wayside, it never even begins to get below level. Stony ground, it gets a little bit below. Thorns, it gets a little bit further, and then good ground. That's the way I look at it. But I guess we could look at it that they didn't receive it. They didn't receive it as they should. Maybe I'm not sure if I'm answering that correctly, but it is a good point, and certainly an interesting point to understand that there's a difference between hearing and understanding. Yes.
No, I'm not saying it's right here.
Right.
But like a small seed, small plant or anything, like you're among the fallen grow into whatever.
Yeah.
It's going to have a difficult time. Now, I would say that eliminate competition, but taking all the moisture, nutrients, and all that out, it can be able to grow. So if you take these things that you're raw in your life, you get them out of your life, you push them away,
Right.
then you can grow.
Allows you to get.
You can't be having all those things that trouble you in your life. You accept it, you can't leave them in place. You have to get rid of them.
I think I think that is the exact spiritual application that's being made here. One is what you said is that while there's still growth, there's still other things growing up as well, which is hindering that growth. We get those out of the way, and if we make the application to our lives, that I'll ask a question to myself, and you can ask a question to yourself. Between Sunday and today, how many times did you open your Bible and read it? How many times did you pray? And I say you, I'm talking about me as well. We also have to answer our question. But, we had a lot of other things going on this week. We had work, we had other obligations and things like that. Did we have enough time to open our Bibles? Did we have enough time to pray? Did we have enough time to visit the sick, call the sick, do whatever it was? And if we didn't because of other things, then maybe we need to look at other things like Warren pointed out. Other things might be crowding that out. So, Mark, are you scratching or are you? Okay. All right. So, all right. All right. Any good points so far? Just kind of, yes. Is that okay? And that's talking about the stone, right? All right. And so they receive it, but then only for a while. With that, we talked last time. The parallel ones here are Matthew 13, and I think Luke 5 are the parallel ones. I haven't looked at Luke 5 to see if it says. I may have that wrong in Luke 5, but yeah, I think I do. But regardless, the receiving of it and us receiving it, how well do we receive it, and then how well do we understand our responsibility? Yes.
That don't make them accept. They have to get that mentality in their heart. They didn't look at it the right thing. Then they just go right there. Like I said, they will find. And then you can say, if that's what we want, a lot of them unintended. And they're gonna say, you know, they're gonna point it on whatever it is. And you
Well,
this is what I'm saying.
I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you're right. You can continue to talk to someone. Certainly we need to do that. I think that was mentioned last time as well. That certainly we don't need to give up after one time. But there's only so much we can do on our end. You know, we can take the gospel, but we can't force people to do what they should, to obey it. So yeah.
We might talk about this last week, but it's one of the main points of this is that our job is to serve.
Yeah.
Right? You know, talking about not being soil inspected.
Right.
Because you want to make the wrong call. Like that person is something like this person's life. And so we might talk to the wrong person when both cases should be talking to both.
Right.
And then everybody,
Yeah.
let them decide themselves, as TJ said, they're going to make a decision whether you're going to accept it.
Yeah.
That's their call. So we just keep going and
Right. Our responsibility is to sow, and our responsibility is not to decide who is a good candidate or not. And he mentioned soil testers. We're not to be that. We're to take it to all. And it was mentioned last time. It's certainly a point that we need to understand is that would Paul have been if Paul were here today, would we consider him a good candidate? Or prior to his conversion, would we have considered him a good candidate for the gospel? Well, good candidate for the gospel is anyone who hasn't obeyed the gospel, truly, right? So regardless of their circumstances. So yeah, we long story short, we shouldn't be soil testers at all. It's our responsibility to take the gospel, take to those who need it. But we can only do so much, but we do have our responsibilities. And if we get to it here, we'll see a little bit more. Last type of ground was what type? Good ground. All right, and so the good ground does what? Yeah, hears it, accepts it, bears fruit, yields fruit, and I think Chuck made the point last time that yielding fruit does not necessarily indicate, or does not necessarily mean that we have, baptized in 30, 60, or 90 years. It can be 30, 60, 90 years. It can be shown in a lot of different ways. We're not going to be held responsible. If we took the gospel to half of the people and no one responded, we're responsible for taking it. And so people respond to it. We should try to do it in the best way possible, and but just in a general sense, we're not responsible for people, obeying or not obeying the gospel. We're responsible for taking it to those who need it. The good ground are those people that take it. It does take fruit, and they certainly understand. They certainly understand that exactly everything that goes on with that. And we got into that last time. And so all right. So we got done with that. And I miss hands all the time. So just holler out my name. If you raise your hand, we'll see you. So now we're going to go to, we'll start with verse 21. And we'll read, and I'll read down through verse 25. And then we'll talk about a couple of things here. So Mark chapter 4. Verse 21, and he was saying to them, a lamp is not brought to be put under a basket, is it, or under a bed? Is it not brought to be put on the lampstand? For nothing is hidden except to be revealed, nor is anything done secret that it would not come to light. If anyone has ears to hear, let him hear. And he was saying to them, take care of what you listen to. By your standard of measure, it will be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. Verse 25, for whoever has, to him more shall be given, and whoever does not have, even what he has should be taken away from him. All right, let's break this up into two little sections here. First of all, first couple of verses here, verses 21 through 23. So he's saying the lamp is not brought to be put under a basket, under a bed. It is not brought to be put on a lampstand, nothing to be revealed, or anything in secret. So what's the lesson that we need to learn from this? or what application, I guess, can we make from this? A lamp is not what? Trey? Do what? No, I'll go to you first. Ladies first.
Are we saying here that the lamb represents life and testimony, and we're not supposed to hide? And that's our way.
The way I took it was, let me go to Gene first. And then, yeah, go ahead.
We are life is to be any the influence that we have as a Christian in our life can be a life to others.
I think so. Along those lines, I was thinking, to Trey's question, I don't know if I would say it's actually the word, other than it would be the manifestation or the result of the word in us. Other people seeing that and everything. So, yeah, Dave. Yeah, Matthew 5:16 is the verse that goes along with this. So what are we talking about? With that, it goes along with what Gene was saying as well. So, a lamp is not brought to be put under a basket or under a bed. Is it not brought to be put on the lampstand? But what are we talking about here with lamps and lampstands and lights and everything? What is that? What's that referring to, EJ? Others should know that we're Christians, and I guess others should know. Let me see how I can say this if I say it right. Others should know without us having to go around telling others that we are. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying that we should be ashamed of that. What I'm saying is that I shouldn't have to walk up to someone with them not knowing me and have to tell them that I'm Christian. They should see that, by the way we talk, by the way we dress, by the way we act, just in general, that we're different, and by the way we handle situations and things like that. And so they know, without me having to, point out, hey, no, I'm Christian, no, I'm Christian, no, I'm Christian. But yes, no.
Like, you know, like, we need the life is solution. So we need to let our life shine, but if you are taking this they're going to get it this so we have the losing references always be doing.
Yeah.
Because if we have one person
Yeah, and it will be seen. Even if others aren't receptive to it, even if others aren't in agreement. I guess if we're talking about spiritual. But when I was it's a long time ago, it's pretty interesting. I wouldn't do it here, but there was a young person's class, and the teacher had they were it was in work areas, we have windows, but he had a student turn to a passage to read it, and before the student read it, he was going to read Acts 5:16 there about let your light shine, so shine before men. He went over and turned the lights off. So in the room with no windows, it was completely dark. And so then he asked the student, go ahead and read. The student said, well, I can't see. So then he had like a little flashlight that he turned on, but everyone could see it. And he saw it well enough that the student was able to read. Now, I'll tell him to great dramatics or anything like that. But the point being that really to go along with Mallory's point is that our light shines, other people can see it, especially in darkness. Because what happens in darkness, even if you have the smallest light, it shows, right? You can see it, right? And there's no mistaking. And then also, I think back to EJ's point, I think is a good one as well, is that we have this, the lamp being the gospel. And yes, go ahead.
saying, in John 8:12, Jesus said, Jesus spoke, saying, I am the light of the world. Jesus always believed in the Lord as the light of life. So, in that respect, when Jesus is the light, we cannot hide the light from anybody.
Right.
Jesus is the light. Jesus goes on that our lifetime, but with Christ's life, it's Christ living in us. So,
yeah.
we hiding, essentially hiding Christ.
Yeah.
From other people by not showing
Yeah.
those characteristics.
Well, yeah, even in Matthew 5, it talks about that when others see our light shine, is it so that they will give us praise? No, it's because they'll give who praise. It's not that they'll recognize that it's God, right? That God is the one. It's not anything that has to do with me necessarily. And back to EJ's point about being about confessing Christ before men, and He'll confess us, and not to be ashamed. We have this great news here, the gospel, but yet we're not going to tell people about it. It's if there's, if I know something good, if I know that one of you is sick with a certain ailment, I don't know, whatever it is, and I know that there's a cure out there, and I decide not to tell you about it, is that loving or caring or anything like that? That's pretty, I'll say hateful. That might be along those lines. If I know that there's a cure for what ails you, and I purposely say, I don't know, it might upset you. You might laugh, you might reject it, you might whatever, right? But if I don't take that to you, and knowing that you need, knowing that you need a cure, knowing that I know what it is, then I would say, along those lines, that it's pretty bad thing to do. So, yes.
We all have to live in the world.
Right.
Whether we're working, we're going to get caught in situations in the world. I know, I bet I've had experience. I've been in meetings with like that. Yeah, feeling great. You come up very just 4 or 5 minutes second around. Somebody starts and I've had occasions before I could do anything, staying there and shooting stuff. When you they got to take that. They didn't appreciate that kind of talk.
Yeah.
I mean, and that, that, I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. A reputation.
Yeah.
A reputation can be very.
Our reputation should precede us. Our reputation should precede us, that people would know that that type of talk in that instance, would be offensive to us.
Yeah, I had an occasion. My boss takes the Army, and then when I had to work, you go in, the 3 of us sitting there talking on the desk all day. He would just then go back on the liquor. He starts pouring the liquor, and he said, I said, I don't drink. He said, well, you will pour them. I said, I don't think so. The story goes on about a week later where he was lunch, and the taste of his infant, and that was my face. And when we were having our afternoon thing, he poured the liquor, pulled up the my face, lemon broth. You see the bag, lemon broth. I go to mix, the mix up, and I go to the bar, whatever. They've already heard about it. He gave him.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, referred to as lemon broth here. So, yeah,
Your reputation, and in a, I don't know if I'll say indirect way, but your light shine, whatever the thing is. Your light was shining before others by them seeing it.
Well, I think that I did not want to be
Right. Associated with that kind of. Right. You didn't want to be associated with that, and certainly, that's how we get to be. You know, when we stand up, even in situations like that, you know, there's all different types of persecution. You know, certainly those in the first century, you know, faced far more severe persecution than we face. And I thought, you know, if we were to compare, you know, if we get up to heaven and we compare with Paul, the type of persecution he faced, you know, and I say, wow, I was at work and they were all going to go out and go drinking after work, and I said, no, we got to go home, and they made fun of me. You know, Paul probably looked at it like, that's it. You know, that's what you have to face. You know, and you consider that, you know, difficult. So yeah.
I think in verse 21 where it says, "It's not brought to be put under a basket or under a bed," but obviously sometimes it is. I mean, it's not brought to that, but obviously you wouldn't say that if it's not done. We can all. I know I can't. I'm sure everybody else can. Sometimes they do.
Right.
So what was I thinking there? How can I better myself to react to those situations so that I don't do that? Because we all.
Yeah.
Sometimes don't do things to.
Yeah, and yeah.
What can you do better?
Yeah, it gives the implication that it's common sense that what we have should be out for, or should be taken for other people to see or to use. You know, if I were to stand up here and tell people, well, I don't know, we don't have any light in our house, you know, for whatever reason, you know, I didn't pay the bill or whatever it was. I mean, light, well, in this instance, that wouldn't work. But anyway, we don't have any light in our house, and then say, we really need to remedy that. And so I say, well, I'm going to go out and buy a lamp. And say, oh, well, that remedies the situation, doesn't like it? Well, no, I'll put it in the closet. That makes no sense at all for you to have something that takes care of the problem and then not use it, right? And so, the probably overkill here, but I think we're saying we have the gospel, we have the light. The light is referred to throughout the scripture. You go through many different verses, being the word that illuminates the path, for ourselves and for others, and that's the gospel. And we need to take that to those to those who need it. We certainly don't need to keep it to ourselves. I think is the overall point there. Verse 22: for nothing is hidden except to be revealed, nor is anything in secret. But that it would come to light. Now, verses 24 and 25, I think are kind of interesting. It says, and he was saying to them, take care what you listen to. By your standard of measure, it will be measured to you, and more will be given you besides. Yeah, verse 25. For whoever has, to him more shall be given, and whoever does not have, even what he has shall be taken away from him. What do you take from these verses? It's very similar to, I think, to another passage and everything. But what do you take from these verses? From these verses here? You get use it or lose it. Certainly one way, especially about using it, in a certain sense. Did I see another hand? Okay. The other way, I think in Matthew 25, and I'm not sure if that's maybe what you were thinking of, the parable of the talents, the one talent man. If we look at Matthew 25, we'll talk about the parable of the talents, but 25:29, for to everyone who has more, for to everyone who has, more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who does not have, even what he does have shall be taken away. In the previous verse, it says, therefore, it talks about the one talent man. If you remember the story, what was you remember just if you can paraphrase the parable of the talents, you remember what that was? See what? Now, different amounts, yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, and what's interesting is that in that parable is that he gave back what was given to him. He didn't lose it. I mean, eventually. I mean, eventually he did, but basically what you said, he was afraid to do anything with it, and so he gave back exactly what was given to him, and exactly what was given to him. Did God accept that? No. God eventually took everything away from him. So the parable of talents, and then talking about that here, that more will be given you, and for whoever has, verse 25, to him more shall be given. Whoever does not have, even what he has should be taken away. The way I look at this, and I may be way off base, but to me it talks about the more one receives and learns, then the more you have the capacity to learn more. Remember what Jesus said before he told them about the parable of the sower. There, he talks about that they needed to learn that to begin with. It's kind of the foundation to understand that the seed is the word, and the soil, are the hearers. And to understand that that's the gospel and how it takes place and things like that. You have to have a foundation somewhere in order to learn. If you want to be an engineer or physics or whatever, if you want to do that for some reason, you need to understand certain principles about mathematics. You can't just, you've got to start there with the basic foundation, but that allows you to learn more. That's the way I look at it with the gospel. If we want to learn, the more, maybe the more, let's say difficult, but there are some more difficult concepts sometimes, and some of the things that we read and we talk about here. But if you want to learn those, you've got to start with the foundation at the beginning, but then that gives us the capacity to learn more. So, any hands or anything? Mark, if you wouldn't, I don't know why, but so I'm just waiting to. Just call them and have them say something. All right. Was I way off, or was I start rambling like that? Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You go back to later lifetime, the more confident we are,
yeah.
The more sure of ourselves.
And yeah. 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 It should be upward. And this principle applies whether we're talking about spiritual things or what, but the more you do something, the easier it gets. And you talk about having confidence in taking the gospel to others. Well, yeah, I might be nervous and I might not do a very good job the first time, but if that's the only time I do it, then how can I expect to get better at it? But that applies in anything else. If my whatever it is, the first time that you played baseball or something like that, you probably weren't very good. You played it for a while, you probably get better. And that goes with anything, whether it's work, whether it's school, whether it's whatever. So yeah.
We have temptation and overcome temptation.
Yeah.
Next time,
right. Right.
And also, if we're listening to whether it's the preacher or somebody teaching flag, and they say something that's the word that's before, if you don't say that and speak that, and as time goes on, you're not going to do it 20, 30, 40, 50.
Yeah. Right. You're going to allow it. It's going to go. And, Gene, if we go back to the example that you gave earlier, that you were giving about bringing, if you think, if you had compromised the first time and say, you know what, I'll go ahead and I'll have a drink here, but then I just won't do it. How much harder would it have been later to come back and say, oh, you know what, I don't drink. And they'd be like, wait a minute, to begin with, you did. But since it was caught at the very beginning, where you said, you know what, I don't participate in that type of activity, it makes it easier going forward. And sometimes we get caught in that, where we don't you know, as Tim said, sometimes we don't do things, that we should or whatever it is. It makes it easier on down the line if you let people know up front the very first time. I don't participate in that, or I don't believe in that sort of thing. It may be difficult to do the first time, but it's a little bit easier the second time, and easier the third time, and so on. Yes, CJ.
You guys have to do it. Because you know, that's the
I'm sorry. Say that again.
People not to do that's the way I'm gonna get it, okay? But if you want to hear them, you have to put this oh my God.
Right. If you want, you make a good point about how bad. If we want to do something bad enough, then we will overcome whatever obstacles it is, and able to, and so that we can do it.
I know the things that they're going to do already. I know the things but I don't know why. Anyway, but they know that I don't need to but they're going to study the acres and they're going to
Did. Yep. I was gonna. I was going to make that point that Gene just made. That it's a way to let that your light is shining, whether you know it or not, is that other people see that, hey, Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Wednesday night, whatever it is, someone, then we know that she goes, or we know that she's going to service. So, and then the other point about, if people want to hear bad enough, they're going to do, whatever it is. You think about, people are certainly willing to go sit and watch a ball game out in the elements, rain, cold, heat, whatever it is, for a couple hours. We have churches have much more comfortable, means here for a lot less time. But we'll do whatever we plan to do. If we put that first, then we're going to find a way to do it, and that goes for the gospel, that goes for our hobbies or whatever it might be. The world was verse 25. Okay, yeah, we're talking about. I think we're talking about in this case, the more we do something, the easier it gets. Being true across the board. If I do something right first time, it's going to be easier. If I teach someone, if I talk to someone about the gospel and they be a little uncomfortable the first time, it's going to be a little less uncomfortable the second time. I may not be very good at it the first time I do it. I may stumble or get nervous, but it's going to get better the more that I do it. Same way with sin, unfortunately. The first time that I maybe commit a sin or compromise my principles, it may really, really, really bother me. But then the second time I do it, it'll still bother me. It's not going to bother me as much. So third time, still bother me some, not as much, and then that's how our heart gets hardened through that process. So, all right. So we got through verses 24 and 25. Let's read 26 through 29, and we'll talk what we can about that. The parable of the seed. And he was saying, the kingdom of God is like a man who casts seed upon the soil. And he goes to bed at night and gets up by day, and the seed sprouts and grows. How he himself does not know. The soil produces crops by itself. First the blade, then the head, then the sugar grain in the head. And when the crop permits, he immediately puts in the sickle because the harvest has come. So again, he's comparing, he's talking about the seed and the planting and growing, right? So, clarifying in this case, the nature of the word, within man. So, It's what he seems to be talking about here. Verse 26, I think references that where it talks about the kingdom of God is like a man casts his seed upon the soil. Verse 27, I think, is interesting. And he goes to bed at night and gets up by day, and the seed sprouts and grows. How he himself does not know. What do you think that has reference to? It's good to think about that. Tim?
We don't know how the word comes to effect.
Yeah. Right.
First, you think the hardest nut to crack.
Yeah.
It'd be easy to do this share the word, so you just don't know
Yeah.
how people react to it.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. It's not for us to understand necessarily, but we know the process is this: is that we sow the seed. We sow the seed. We preach the word. All right, and then once the word is in the hearts and it's out there, then the power of the gospel does the rest. And like Tim said, how that happens is really irrelevant, other than God's power is in control. Yes. God gave the increase, yeah, and how that happened, like Tim was pointing out, and then having to get to the most hardened person that we know, but yet God's word is powerful enough to do that. All right, thank you for the comments. Lord willing, we'll pick up right around there next Wednesday.
If you will go ahead and mark your songbooks to 595. That would be the song that we'll sing after Tony does the invitation. And we'll do 523. Our God, He is alive. There is beyond the azure blue a God concealed from human sight. He gently guides with heavenly dew and brings the world with His great might. There is a God, He is alive. In Him we live and we survive. From dust our God created man. He is our God, the great I am. There was a long, long time ago a God whose voice the prophets heard. He is the God that we should know, who speaks from His inspired word. There is a God, He is alive. In Him we live and we survive. secure is life from mortal mind. God holds the dream within his hand. Though men may search, they cannot find, for God alone does understand. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive. We survive from the created man. He is the great I am. Our God who hung upon a tree, a life was willing then to give, that He from sin might set men free, and evermore with Him could live. There is a God, He is alive, in Him we live, and we survive. From dust our God, created man. He is our God, the great I am.
Good evening. If you would take the Bibles, we'll get to the. We're going to go to Acts chapter 9. Acts chapter 9. The road to Damascus, Saul converted. We'll talk about tonight. We've read the story 100 times, but I'm going to read some of it again tonight. Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him, the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found any who were on the way, whether men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, Who are you, Lord? Then the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. So he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Then the Lord said to him, Arise and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. And the men, this is where I wanted to stop. And the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no one. You know, each and every Lord's Day and each and every day of our life, you know, we should have our light shining, as we discussed in our Bible class tonight. And the men with Saul, they stood speechless. You know, is that how people react around us? Are they speechless because, you know, we don't act as they do or we don't do as they do? So that's really the point I wanted to make tonight. So how big of an effect do we have on those people? You know, you can turn over to Matthew. I had it. Matthew 10 verse 34 says, Do not think that I came to bring peace on earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be those of his own household. He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he who does not take his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it. And he who loses his life for my sake will find it. So how astonished are people with you? You know, he's not telling you not to love your mother or father. He's not telling you not to love your brother or sister. But what he's saying is this: I'm first. There is absolutely nothing in this world that comes before me. That's what it's all about. And to be that Christian, you know, that's what it is. What do you put before God? How astonished are people that you say, no, I'm not going to be there and partake of that tonight. You know, that's what it's all about. We set ourselves apart from the world. That's what Christians do. So if you haven't obeyed the gospel, you know, now's the time to start setting yourself apart from the world. Letting people know that no matter how much I would like to do that, or how tempted I might be, that God comes first. He's first in our life, and that's the way it's going to be. No matter how difficult it is, whether you lose a friend, or whether your family members or your friends are astonished, they're speechless at what you say, do, and hear. That's what it's about. God's number one, and the rest is it's the way it is. So if you're not a Christian tonight and you've yet to obey the gospel, now's your opportunity to come forward while we stand and sing.
Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner, it must not suffer long. From victory unto victory, his army shall he lead, till every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord indeed. Stand up for Jesus, the trumpet call obey. For through the mighty conflict in this his glorious day, ye that are men now serve him against unnumbered foes. Let courage rise with danger, and strength to strength oppose. Stand up for Jesus, the strife will not be long. This day the noise of battle, the next the victor's song. To him that overcometh, a crown of life shall be. He with the King of glory shall reign eternally.
Well, before we're dismissed, does anybody have any announcements? I know Sandy said the Barkers are out of town tonight, and then the Nevins are out of town. Sandy and them are going out of town this weekend. The Caissons will be out of town this weekend. Okay. And then we're going to be out of town as well this weekend. Mike, Chris is working. Ray's working. Dave, Valley, Dan's at work. Anyone else? Scott, TJ, lead us in. Thank you. Pray.
today, we gave the opportunity to go together for 45 days. Pretty good. Thank you for the neighborhood that joined us. The price of those who respect the people, especially ones that travel. Yeah, man.
Thank you.
really come a long way from what
So that's one thing. I never felt
start to roll.
Every time I go home, I sell it home. Assuming it happened so quick that like it wasn't like just wasn't into it. But not like except for about 45 minutes later, I walked back in. See, it happened so quick. I mean, I saw it looking back at the like, oh. We didn't have I told them, I said, well, I was glad it happened to me. You realize that like I did, that's what I worry about.
Well, I don't know, I get up there and find.
I love it.
It's almost like